Hi, I'm Dr. Feyinfolu Balogun, also known as Folu for short.
Hi, I'm Dr. Onyinye Balogun. We are the Ankh Docs.
On this episode of the Ankh Docs, we speak with Isi Onyemenem. She shares with us the heartbreaking manner in which she found out about her mother's breast cancer diagnosis. Before beginning the podcast today, we want to share with you a poem written by Isi Poetry. As seen on Instagram, she writes, Excerpt, Remix, The Toughest by Isi. When then the weekend came, and it was time to tell my son, I stayed in bed with the covers overhead, peering out only to watch the snowfall. He left for a friend. I drank port wine for breakfast and went to bed again. Dinner at a neighbor's. Afterward, I told him. He sliced through the air with a bamboo sword, lunging at an invisible enemy, swinging broadly with the strength of a man and the fears of a child. While I sat cross-legged on the beanbag, recounting information about treatment, about doctors and second opinions, he interrupted to ask a few questions about money, surgical options, my job security. He was angry, but not at me. Broken record, I kept saying how we were lucky to have such good friends who'd volunteered to step in. Broken record, I kept saying I am tough, I will get through this. He said he had no questions, grabbed his book on human anatomy, took his house keys, promising we could watch Star Wars together when he returned. That is such a powerful poem that encapsulates all of the emotions associated with trying to communicate your cancer diagnosis to a loved one. Thank you, Isi Poetry.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm doing well. So thank you for agreeing to be a guest on the Ankh Docs podcast. Would you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. So my name is Isi Onyemenem, a mother, a wife, a working wife, mom of two. I'm married to a handsome man, Adinigwe Onyemenem, and have an 11-year-old and a 2-year-old. So we are very happy.
Wonderful. And where do you live and what do you do for a living?
Sure. So we do live in Georgia, and I am an auditor by profession, I should say.
Nice. So, would you please just tell us your story of how you've encountered cancer in your family?
Sure. So my mom and I pretty much grew up with my mom. We were very, very close. And I came over to the United States for college in 2001. And I tell you, every day we spoke, pretty much. My mom and I spoke. However, in 2004, in January, probably about February timeframe, my mom had called me and said, hey, I'm going for like not a seminar, but like a Christian gathering event somewhere. And I was like, okay, that's fine. But she never told me she wasn't going to call me or whatever. So I would call her and she wouldn't pick up the phone. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? So eventually when I got a hold of her, I was like, Mom, what happened? And she's like, oh, my phone died. And I'm like, why didn't you take a charger or something? And she said, well, I just couldn't get a charger. And she just rambled on. And there was this trust I had about my mom, that my mom just couldn't be wrong in any way, shape, or form. She couldn't lie. She just couldn't say the wrong thing. So I just blew it off, right? And that happened again, as a matter of fact. However, I remember then I was in college. This was in my third year. I was a junior. Yes, I was a junior in college when this was happening. And I remember having a couple of dreams, that I buried my mom and I just kind of blew it off. Well, fast forward that same year, I just got a lot of relatives that were just, all around me and just consistently calling. Isi, I'm just calling to check up on you. And it was so weird. And I was like, why are you all calling me? It's not like I did not appreciate the love. I did, but it was just very different and weird. Anyways, that year, my boyfriend, then who is my husband right now, he was coming from Nigeria to America. So we had planned to go to England and meet in England in August. so that he would meet my mom and then we would come back to America together. However, somehow my mom just mixed all of that up again, messed up the entire plan. I was like, okay, whatever, will come in December, right? Fast forward to December. So this was like from February time frame, fast forward to December. Adi and I, we left actually from Baltimore House for England. And I remember we missed our train because we were supposed to land in England on the 16th of December. We missed the train from Baltimore, making us miss our flight in Newark, out of Newark Airport. And on the 17th, we got to England. And typically, because I did go to England every holiday we had from school, and my mom would pick me up. Well, this day I saw my uncle and my mom's best friend, and I'm like, well, what's my mom? And they go, well, your mom, she's cooking at home. I remember so clearly, and I'm like, she's cooking at home. My mom does not like cooking. So what are you talking about? I blew it off. And we were in the car, and then my mom's best friend called me this fun name that she likes to call me. And she goes, is your mom in the hospital? And the first thing I asked was, is she dead? And she said, no. And at that point, of course, I don't trust anyone anymore, whatever they were saying. So we got into the hospital. And the first sign I was looking for was a mortuary sign, because I just want to know if that's where we're headed. Well, thankfully, that was not where we were headed. And we went into the hospital, and I saw my mom. And I remember, like, I was just that close to the floor, very close to the floor. And someone picked me up and said, Isi, you can't do this right now. You have to be strong for her. If you do that, she's just going to, she might just pass away. So I had to muster all of the strength that you can think about. I mustered all the strength. And of course, I was by her bedside. But unfortunately, I think, the funniest thing was by the time we got there, my mom was no longer talking. As of the day before, they said she was still talking. And I really felt like she had all that mind and she had all that strength mustered and saying, to herself, this is my thinking that I'm going to talk to this girl. She's coming on the 16th. But by the time that the 17th rolled over, my mom wasn't talking anymore. So here we are. And I honestly cannot tell you the amount of information that was being thrown at me. I cannot even recant them at all because I just can't remember. It was just unbelievable what was happening to my mom. When you think about things like cancer or death or things, like sometimes it just seems like it can happen to your loved ones or to, people that are so close to you. So I was just in these days like, oh my gosh, this is real. But all along, I wasn't aware of this. Other people knew. It wasn't like she kept it away from people. They knew. But for every person that knew, it was almost she had given this instruction, you cannot tell Isi. You cannot tell Isi. So everybody was very much aware of that. And because of that, my older sister, who was in Nigeria at that time and couldn't make the funeral because the embassy was closed, she couldn't get that same information also because my mom was of the opinion that if she knew, I would know. So we both got to know on the same day, the same night, the same day I got to England, she got to know on that date, and this was the 17th. But, it's so funny because my mom is a person of faith, and I remember people around, I actually remember people in the hospital saying, oh, your mom, she would come, she would pray by my bedside for me while she was dealing with her cancer. But that was how I got to know about my mom having cancer. I think this was back in 2004. And, I believe that things have progressed on how they treat cancer today in comparison to 2004. But back then I was informed that my mom was diagnosed in January of 2004. And I think there was a lot of conflict as far as the information she got. There was a lot of, why don't you get the chemo and we'll shrink this tumor and then we'll take it out. And some people were like, just go ahead and take it out. But my mom decided to go through the chemo, shrink it and take it out. But unfortunately, I've always known my mom not to be one that can endure pain. Chemo was too much for her that at some point she made a decision to stop and she didn't want that quality of life. So this was 2004, December 17th, when I found out. We went back home. We're still in England. We went to the house in England, Adi and I. So we would come back every day. Well, on the 18th, I remember when I got to the hospital, there were a few people from her church there. And there was this man that came in and said, we have to tell your daughter today. We really have to tell your daughter in America today. We have to. And I'm like, oh, I'm here. And there was just this huge relief on the man's face, like, oh gosh, yes, you're here. And about, your mom And that was just the case. That was what we lived day in, day out in the hospital until I think it was either the 19th or the 20th. I remember, I think it was the 19th, the night of the 19th or the 20th, one of the, I remember clearly coming out of her room because she was in a private room. And I just prayed and I said, God, if you're going to heal her, heal her. And if you're not, it's okay to take it, because that pain that she was going through was just too much. I mean, she was constantly getting this pain medicine and she just wasn't who she was anymore. And well, Buddy and I had said we were going to stay over that night, but my mom's best friend called us right in the middle of the night and she was like, "Where are you guys?" And I'm like, "We're in the hospital." And she was going off and saying, no, you need to come home, blah, blah, blah. So we went home. And the 21st, a family member came and she came to visit, a family friend actually. I mean, honestly, it was like once I got back, I accompanied her as she was leaving. Once I went back into the room, I just had this weird smell of my mom in the hospital. And I was like, wow, that's quite strong, And I just kept moving. Well, a few minutes later, we got a call from the hospital because the family friend was at the hospital and she was like, "Hey, where are you? Where are you? You need to come here now, blah, blah, blah." Well, that was because my mom had passed away at that time. And so we rushed to the hospital. I don't even know, because it wasn't like the hospital was a walking distance, but I just cannot tell you my frame of mind during that drive to the hospital. I can't even remember where I was or what my thought process was, but I got to the hospital and there she was. My mom had passed away from metastatic breast cancer at age 55 on December 21st of 2004. It was quite unbelievable. I remember I went mute for probably about 12 hours. I mean, I didn't talk. People would call and I remember Audie would just say, she can hear you, but she's not going to talk, right? And they would, put the phone to my ear and I was just mute for hours. I was just lying down and I was numb. I don't think I was really having any thought, but like I said, my mom and I were very close. And for the longest, I always dreamed of, like, my mom liked bungalows, what we call ranch in America. And I've always dreamt of I was going to build one for her. I was going to get her a car. I mean, because my mom lived her life for her kids, I felt. And I remember at one point I did say, so what am I leaving for? Like, what am I going through education for? Why do I want to be successful? She was really the reason behind, at that time, my life behind it. So about a week later, we buried my mom in England. And here we are, 16 plus years later, thankful for the memories we built. There's still some tough days, absolutely, especially during milestones, over the years, graduating from college, because I graduated May of the next year. It was very tough. I've gotten married, I've had kids, I started my first job, many jobs later. But there are times that, you just wake up and you feel like, there are days that I could wake up and I just bawl. But once I bawl, I'm good, right? So that's how I got to know my mom had cancer.
Isi, thank you so much for, talking so candidly about your experience. As you're talking, I see you reliving it. I'm sorry to put you through that, but I think there's so many things about your experience that other people can hopefully benefit from. So the first question I have for you is, why do you think your mother didn't tell you? Because you did mention that you two are very close. You spoke every single day. She also didn't tell your older sister, if I'm correct. Why did she not tell you or your older sister?
So my mom didn't tell me because I did hear people talk about, like she said, she felt like, because my mom knew that if she had told me, I honestly would have left school for that year to spend my time with her. I remember hearing that she felt like, she's lived her life and she didn't want to hinder me from living my life. She felt like I still had my life to live, but she was at the end of her journey and she did not want to interrupt that. So again, my understanding is that she really placed, to the best of her thought, her decision, she felt like she was placing me in my future ahead of her having to tell me that, oh, she was going through cancer. Because I know too that I would have left to just go spend time with her. And I think the reason that she didn't tell my older sister, she asked them not to tell my older sister, was she was really trying to prevent me hearing about the situation. That was really what it was from my older sister's perspective.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you had a lot of trust in your mother, that you felt she could do no wrong. How did this experience, if at all, affect the trust that you had placed in her?
I think I've been able to come and wrap, of course, now, of course, I know, she's just human as everyone else, right? She has her flaws and things of that nature. I don't ever remember being angry with her about the situation after she died, of course. Maybe thinking about it now because I have kids, I think we're different. Yes, I would, God forbid anything like this happening, but if it were to happen, I definitely want my kids to be part of that journey. But I don't think I ever counted it against her. Do I wish things could have been different? Absolutely, yes. If my mom had told me, I think, and given me the opportunity to walk through that journey with her, sometimes I do think about it. I'm like, opportunities to just go out, walk around London, go to places together, take pictures, cry through it, laugh through it, build more memories. I think those are the only things that I just wish so much that we had. Because for instance, even though I went to England every holiday, my mom and I don't have pictures of when I was older, right? And I wish we had that. I do have pictures when I was younger with my mom, but I didn't have pictures when I was older. So I just wish we had all of that. I would have taken so many pictures. We would have just built memories. There's so many questions I wish I asked my mom. So, I'm a Nigerian, and I think one of the things that, in comparison to our kids, that we did not do well, just due to culture, not that it's wrong, was that we didn't necessarily ask our parents questions like, oh, when did you meet dad? Or, what was your relationship like, whether you guys were together or not, right? And so that we can learn from some of those mistakes they did. We just don't have that. So these are questions that I would have loved to ask. Now, I think, if we had that opportunity, I would have known some of these answers. And those are just the things that I don't have. So I can't really sit down here and tell you, oh, this was my mom's story. Like our 11-year-old, she would tell you, oh, my mom is this age, my dad is this age, this was where they met, because she asks us these questions and to build a story. We don't think about it in terms of us building a story, but many years down the line, when we think about it, we have a story to tell, right? But I honestly just don't have that. I really wish I did.
Yeah, understood. And do you think this has influenced how you are raising your daughters? I want you to live a long, long life. Has that experience influenced you as a parent?
Yes, for sure. It has, in that, of course, we have to do this appropriately for our 11-year-old, right? We share our stories with her. We tell her appropriately, right? Tell her the right thing. We share our stories with her. We allow her to take into our journey, right, with us. This girl has been exposed to so much, and she goes through some hurt with us, and we allow her into that because it's just part of life, right? There's no one that would come into this earth that would not have their own challenges. But for us, it's really for our daughters, just allowing her to go through the journey with us. And I think at the end of the day, what we try to let her understand is that because we're people of faith also, we rely on God for everything. And there are times that, down the line, we can say, oh, remember when that happened and we were praying about it? Yes, this is how it came about, and that's okay. But look at where we've come from, we've learned and things of that nature. So it definitely did influence the way we raise our daughters today.
And then what was it like for you to be hit with this news? Basically, to see your mom in her final days and your emotions were overcoming you, and people told you you have to be strong. Do you resent having to be strong? And how did you find the strength during that period of time to not just fully lose your mind?
I didn't resent having to be strong, but I would say I'm very, very thankful that my husband today, he was there with me. He definitely was, oh my gosh. He was a rock, honestly. He just was. I don't know. I think my story might have been different if it wasn't there, but because he was there, yes, it was just my boyfriend. As a matter of fact, I remember my mom's best friend's oldest son, actually the only son, was like, boy, he was telling Eddie, like, she's only your girlfriend. If I were you, I'll be up and gone. I'll be back in America, right? That was how much it was really just right by my side and helping me through it. The funniest thing is when my mom passed, after she passed in, I cried a little bit, but I didn't go through what I would consider a numb of grieving. And what I mean by that is, I just wasn't crying and wailing at that moment, even at a funeral. I think my grieving came after I got back to America. That was when it really started for me. I don't know whether it was because of the busyness of the funeral, because we got back to America in January, I think that first week. I don't know if it was the busyness of that, but my grieving really started when I came back to America. So my final senior year was very, very tough. It was a very tough year. I remember, it was very tough because I remember I'll be in class and I'm just crying. Like, even though I'm unable to control myself, uncontrollably crying. And yeah, so I didn't resent my mom, but I think the way that I was able to get through it, of course, God, I think definitely just placed Adi there in my life at that moment. But he definitely helped me through that. And just to let me know that it was okay.
And then how did you and your sister, how did this influence your relationship with your sister? You guys basically being in the same boat of we both had no idea that this very special person to us was going to be taken away.
Yeah. So my sister and I have never been the close type. So it necessarily did not bring us any closer. And I think because she was also not there physically, it didn't really bring us closer. But I mean, I think we just really talked through it. I think it was a lot. My thought, I don't know, I don't even think I ever asked her, was that I just couldn't imagine being in her shoes that she couldn't make the funeral because she couldn't come over to England at that time. But I believe that must have been quite tough for her too. But it necessarily didn't change our relationship in any way. It was just the same thing, and then we just kept moving forward.
And you mentioned that your mom, her quality of life, the chemo, she had to take chemotherapy first to try and shrink the tumor. Yeah,
Yes.
so she could then go to surgery. Is there a part of you that thinks about if I had known, would I have made her do the chemo? If I had known, what are your thoughts around her
Yeah.
choices with treatment?
I definitely did have that thought for sure. I think if I had known, I would have asked her to go for the surgery and take out whatever they had to do immediately rather than having to go through a long process. Because again, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sure that would have been faster and better. So whatever he had to do, but I definitely would have pushed her, I think, against her wish. Now, do I know if she would still be alive today? I definitely don't know that, but I would have thought that would have been a better choice. And I think if I had known and had asked her to do that, I really do believe that's what my mom would have done. My mom was very, those are the doctors, they know what they're doing, that type of person. And I get it, but I think I would definitely have stirred her towards, why don't you go ahead and have the surgery now? And then they will go from there, for sure.
So just a few more questions. You mentioned that you started wondering what was the purpose of life because you had thought, I'm going to buy a bungalow for my mother, a car for her to repay her for all the selfless things. How did you find meaning in life again after that period?
So I remember one time, like I told you, my mom was like everything to me. It's so funny because my mom would say, she'll call me, she'll say, Isi, you have to love God before me. And I'm like, oh yeah, of course, I love God before you. But in all honesty, that wasn't the case. My mom was, oh my goodness, she was just my everything. Like she was the type of person that I could give an arm for my mom, a leg for my mom. So I think after the funeral and all, it was just the day to day, just keep leaving and all of that. But there was a time I did attend a service, and I can't remember the title of the service, but what I brought out of the service was, all along, baby, God has been calling my attention and trying to get my attention. I just couldn't take my gaze off of my mom. Now, that might sound mean to some people, but that's not what I mean. He's still a loving God, but again, that's the meaning to me, right? And him taking my mom forced me to put my gaze on God and just to turn my face completely to him. And I think from that moment, it made a difference for me. And then today, I did tell my daughter, I said, no matter who comes your way in life, your mom, your dad, your husband to be, your boyfriend in between, your sister, whomever, they are secondary to God. God has to be the primary person. He has to be the number one. I said, because he's always going to be the one that is there. And we just told her today, we told her, we say, Mom and Dad are not always going to be here. We've been saying that for a long time. Yeah, some people might say, oh my gosh, that's quite harsh at 11. But again, I feel like these are things that we have to prepare. We feel like we have to prepare our kids for, maybe if my mom had told me some of these things, I don't know, maybe it would have made, it's just something that that's going to happen in life, right? But, I think that was the moment I was able to say, you know what, there's more to life. All right, I'm here for a reason and a purpose. My family today, I have a family, right? And there's just so many other things in life, but that was a moment for me.
And then finally, has this affected how your family discloses or discusses people's ailments? Because your mom had cancer at a fairly young age. So how has this made you or other family members more aware of cancer or the need to discuss, what people might be going through?
So I remember after my mom passed, and you know, just as a female, and you go through your monthly menstrual cycle, right? People have they go through different, not pain, but some people have cramps and tenderness in the breast and things of that nature. And apparently, I do have those. And oh my gosh, after my mom passed, it was as if every tenderness I had, I just automatically just thought it was breast cancer. And that, I remember that was, oh my gosh, it was crippling me every month. And I remember talking to an aunt who is the doctor in England. And I said, hey, Auntie Azuka, this is what's going on. And she was one that told me about the BRCA test. And she was like, okay, so I need you to go to your doctor and you go take this test. I'm so glad that she did tell me about it. I went to take it and thankfully it was negative. So that kind of gave me that peace of mind and like, oh, okay, this is not genetic, right? Now I'm just like everyone in whatever, 8, 7 women out there. So that was really, really a big deal for me at that time. Now, does it change the way we communicate, whether with friends or for me or whomever? I think I definitely do believe it has, because someone that's very close to the family was going through cancer this moment, and she's older, she's in her 70s. Is it tough? Yes, it is. But I think that I have the opportunity to talk to her today because she's very dear to me. I have the opportunity to talk to her. When I call her, I don't feel like, oh, what am I going to talk about? And then just focus on the fact that she's going through that ailment today. But that's not the case. We just talk normally. Then I ask her, I don't shy away from it. How are you feeling today? Have you been able to eat? Are you feeling any weakness? And depending on what she tells me, sometimes I'm able to call Fee and I go, okay, Fee, this is what's going on. What does this mean? This is the type of medicine she has. Is this impacting her negatively and things of that nature? I think I'm able to face it head on. Like I really am able to face it and just talk about it rather than shying away from it or like it doesn't exist, right? It does. It's there. It breaks our heart that we have to see our loved ones go through this. But I just think that it's when people are going through that journey, walk along that journey with them, be there the way they want you to be, because sometimes we as human beings, we want to be there, and for the other person it might be too much or whatever the case might be, but just walk along that journey with them. It's going to be tough. We're going to cry, we're going to laugh, build memories. I just think it's so important to do that because those are the things in the moment you tend to hold on after this person is gone. Or if the person scales it and gets on the other side and is better and is alive, at least you guys have built that journey, that story together, and you've gone through that together, you've been there together, and you're thankful that, oh my gosh, the person is still alive today. I've gone through this, you know. So I think that's the way that's impacted me differently. You know, I would always, it's just like, like I said, this person, and I'm trying to talk to someone. I'm like, now that you know this is happening, what's different? Or what type of questions do you think you want to ask your mom now? Just think about that. Doesn't mean you're saying she's going to die. That's not what I'm saying. But just ask those questions now, because we just don't know what tomorrow holds.
Beautiful. And last question. I know you said you wish you'd had more opportunities to make more memories with her. So out of the memories you do have, what is your favorite memory of your mother? Can you share that with us?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's it. I have tons, tons of memory with my mom. But one of the things that it's not like we traveled abroad together or anything of that nature when we were in Nigeria. That wasn't the case. But my mom and I always, we just played. There was just this thing where we would just play every time, because my sister is older. She's 13 years older than me. So my mom and I were home together because my sister was in college, right? So we would just play, we would laugh. I think my mom was the first person that gave me alcohol to taste. That was how much fun we had. She was, she really was. And it was so bitter that I was like, oh my gosh. And today I am not an alcoholic. Like, my favorite beer is Smirnoff Ice, the original. I'm sure people are like, what is that? That's not a beer. But that's the favorite thing I drink. I hardly drink, wine, or, I'm not just into alcohol, because that taste just is like, oh, this is so bitter, right? So my mom and I would just always have fun together. Us putting up Christmas decorations on a yearly basis was just constant. I remember I don't know if you remember the black and white TV that had this like opening and closing and some legs. That was the TV we had. And I remember our Christmas tree was always to the right. And we had this pretty Christmas decorations that we put together. Every time we would listen to Bunny M. Bunny, you don't know the group. It's a group called Bunny M, as an M, the letter, Bunny M, the Germans. And we would listen to the Christmas music together on cassette. Remember the cassette? Aha, yeah. And because of my mom, we would listen to Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton together. Because of her, I really do like country music today. Oh gosh, we used to binge watch Sound of Music. Oh my gosh, my mom loved Sound of Music. We could watch it once we're done. We'll start all over again on that VHS and we will watch it together. So I was just always cuddling beside her. We would play, we would laugh. And, those are the memories that I definitely cherished about my mom.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate having you on the show today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem.
This is very striking, and how Issy was not aware of what her mom was going through and felt that she was not able to support her as she would have wanted to. And this brings up the question of what are potential reasons for why people would want to hide their cancer diagnosis, especially from close friends and family.
Yeah, I think the reasons for hiding one's cancer diagnosis are multifaceted. There are many reasons why. Some that come to mind are stigma. Unfortunately, we still live in a society where if you have cancer, some people might think that you did something wrong and brought it upon yourself, or people might just shun you for other reasons. So I think unfortunately we still exist in settings, or settings still exist, where cancer diagnosis comes with certain stigma, and not even just the stigma of family and friends. Think about work, right? I've unfortunately
Mhm.
had taken care of individuals who were diagnosed with cancer, and the next thing they knew, they didn't have a job any longer, which comes with a whole nother set of issues. So you can understand why someone might
Mm.
want to hide their cancer diagnosis. What do you think are some of the reasons, or what have you come across?
One thing that also jumped out to me when you were talking about stigma and how others would think or feel, one of the things is probably the stigma that people feel upon themselves. So when someone is told they have cancer, one of the first things they think is, what did I do wrong? Or what should I have done differently? So that guilt or that stigma of maybe it may not even exist coming from the outside, but within them.
Mm,
So that's interesting. But that's a very real, the stigma you talk about is it's very real. And I think I agree with you, contributes significantly to one of the reasons why people want to hide their cancer diagnosis. Another thing that comes up is the emotional burden.
mm,
Cancer, as we know, affects not only the person that was diagnosed, but the family and friends and close ones
yeah.
around. And some people may feel that they want to protect, I think, may feel they want to protect others around them
Mhm.
by not placing this emotional burden on
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. No, I think that was at play with Isi and her mother. I think she knew she and Isi were so close that she anticipated that the impact of her disclosing her cancer diagnosis could really adversely hurt her daughter. And you can understand that kind of sacrifice, that a parent would have or would make for their child to want to protect their child from something that could be devastating to them. But at the same time, I think EC still went through a hard time. And maybe it might have been even a little more difficult not being able to have the closure, not being able to have certain conversations. So there's so many things to weigh when deciding to disclose your cancer diagnosis or not.
Exactly. What do you think is another reason?
I think also perhaps there's denial. Maybe if you don't speak it to other people, it doesn't make it as real. So I think that could also be at play in some of these situations. But what I want to
Mm-hmm.
emphasize, everyone walks their own journey. And I don't think we're here to say you have to tell people or you don't. You have to figure out what's right for you and your family and navigate that. And fortunately, if you do want to tell them, there are tools. I believe there are a number of people who have written books about telling a young child, that you have cancer. We'll link it in the show notes, some of these authors. But there are people who can help, and there are books and there are tools to help you share that, because it is hard to navigate this whole process on your own, and it may be good to at least share with one person who's close to you.
Yeah, many of us have heard the saying, a problem shared is half solved. Not to say that you discuss your cancer and you feel like it's half solved, but there is some truth to that. In that when you do discuss something with someone or something like a significant burden like a cancer diagnosis with someone, it can help with unburdening you a bit. Not necessarily to burden that other person, but talking about it, just talking about it, having a listening ear can help you feel a little better. I am curious about what our listeners think about different other, either people who have been in these situations or people who have witnessed it or just their thoughts about what other reasons people could have for not disclosing their cancer diagnosis to close people, to the loved ones and
Mm-hmm.
friends.
Mm-hmm. And then we'd also love to hear from you about strategies that you found were helpful if you did want to disclose but didn't know how to go about it.
You can send us a message through the website, theyoungdocs.com, or you can write it in, you see our show notes there too. You can write it in the comments.
Yeah.
Something you did bring up, Onye, the opportunity to walk with someone through this journey. Yes, I think we should always remind ourselves, and I always emphasize that the main person is the person who is diagnosed with cancer. Yes, it does affect family members and other loved ones, but that's the person that tends to affect the most. Now, this opportunity for others to walk with this person in this journey is invaluable to the others, to the family, the friends, the loved ones, for them to be able to, even if they can't help you with a cure, but for them to be with you during this journey is invaluable to them. And that's one really good reason from what you said that sharing or discussing a diagnosis I think that's a good, strong argument for it, encouraging when people can. But it's not easy to talk about your diagnosis. Sometimes you don't know how to start talking about it or what to say about it. But that's where, like you said, we have professionals and colleagues that can help with guiding and how to introduce this, even with discussing with children.
Exactly. So thank you to EC for sharing her story.
That concludes today's episode. See you next time. For more information about our podcasts, visit our website, www.theoncdocs.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on Spotify or Apple. And if you like what you hear, please give us a review on Apple.